somehow I was involved with over the last week, and things that I thought could be helpful for all of you. Um, and I don't get totally transparent about some of the things in my life, but I actually did something this weekend that involves business, but it also involves spirituality. And I'm going to get transparent about my own spirituality here. But the reality is, this event, if you ever get a chance to go to something like it, or even to the specific company that does this event, which only does these events here in the United States, um, you should maybe think about it. It could be something you might enjoy. Um, and because these are unbelievably good speakers that are at this event. So it was last Saturday. It was held at our large university here, Boise State University. It was held at the um, basketball arena that they have, the large, seats 10,000 plus people arena. And it was a close to a sellout. So there were just about as many people as it would seat. There were some empty seats, but not a lot. And anyway, it was a great event called Life Surge, and it lasted all day. Started at 8:30 in the morning. Actually, they did some things starting at 8:30, and really the event started at 9. And the speakers spoke for about 30 minutes each throughout the day. And it was supposed to end at about 5, and it lasted till a little after 6 because it was just so well done, and people were there, and they went longer just because people were enjoying it, obviously from the applause that they were getting from the audience. And some of you will have heard of some of the speakers that were there. Kathy Ireland, who was a Sports Illustrated swimsuit cover model back in the 80s, and was a very successful career as a talk show host and as an actress and as a model. Nick Vukacek, and that's not probably the right way to pronounce his name, in a let's say a Slavic language pronunciation. Vucicic might be more appropriate. He was born without any arms and legs, and he's considered like the number one motivational speaker in the world, even, because if you can imagine that you can be off the charts positive if you have no arms and no legs, which is what he is. Just think about that. And so he was one. A guy that we know because of his football that he played in Denver, Colorado, was actually on a Super Bowl team. And he wasn't that great, but he got a lot of publicity. A lot of people hoped that he'd be better than he was, named Tim Tebow. And then let's see who else. There were a bunch of other speakers you've never heard of. Ed Mylett, who's a podcaster, does all kinds of different podcasting, and he was one. But there was Willie Robertson. Maybe you've heard of him. It's pretty well known television / streaming show called Duck Dynasty, that was aired for many years here in the United States, and he was one of the stars of a sort of a real life show that was literally also a fiction. So it wasn't, they did a historical fiction of their lives. And let's see who else. Oh, those were the primary. There were others, like I said. Here's what was cool. These kinds of events, they call them arena events. Usually it'll cost several $100s. This cost $27. $27 is all. And again, amazing bargain for the price. And I would highly recommend it. The places that will be in the U.S. in the future are, Charlotte, North Carolina, and Fort Myers, Florida, a bunch of places. I'm sure they'll also have events in 2025. These are the ones that are still remaining in 24. So that was Saturday. Thursday night, after this session, did I tell everybody last week, Mark, what I was going to do Thursday night?
Yeah, I think you showed some pictures of where you were going in the afternoon. Yep.
What was it? Do you remember? It's one you should
Uh,
remember.
yeah, I remember like it was kind of amusement park kind of thing.
No,
Uh, okay.
no, no. I mean, it was, and it cost $11, by the way, which is just nothing. Um, it was a Beach Boys concert.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember. Yes.
And again, if you follow rock music in the United States, I don't care how old you are, if you're a 5-year-old or if you're a 90-year-old, you've heard of the Beach Boys. Um, I don't know how many number one songs they have had during their tenure as a band, but they've been around. They were originally formed in 1962, and so you can see how old they are. Only one of the original band members is still alive, or excuse me, is still performing. There's actually three of them still alive. The other two are not performing any longer. One of them has actually got some mental health issues. He's got dementia. And then the third one, Al Jardine, who was one of the band members, just doesn't feel like he's capable of performing any longer. Um, the other four band members, the other band members were Brian Wilson, Carl Wilson, and Mike Wilson. They were all brothers, and then Mike Love. So that was the five in the band, and the only one left is Mike Love, and Mike Love is 81 years old. They performed for an hour and 45 minutes approximately, and it and they never took a break, and the energy was almost as much at the end as it was when they started, which is pretty amazing for a rock band. They played almost 80-90% of what they played were their hits that everybody knew of, but they played some songs that either weren't as well known or were literally really new. One of the newer members, and the entire band is probably about 7 people total: keyboardist, 3 guitarists, drummer, sax player, and a flutist. I believe that was a completely separate person that did that. So 6 or 7. Anyway, they were awesome. So for $11, which is how much it cost, and you're probably remembering, Mark, amusement, because it was held at the what's called Western Idaho Fair, which occurs
Right. Okay.
for a week during this time of the year. Um, and your $11 got you into the fair, gave you the ability to go visit whatever else is there. There is a carnival. The carnival costs $70, though. That's where they get your money coming from you. And we didn't go to the carnival, and that's where the rides are and the amusement park side of it is. But we did go and watch and listen to the Beach Boys, and took one of our woofers with us, Chad, who's now working with us from California. We just graduated from college and he's working for the Forest Service. So he's staying, living with us here in our second home that we have on the property and working with us through what's called the woofing program, which we've talked about multiple times. We have lots of comments / questions in the chat. I'm going to pull that up and look. Alicia put some stuff, Robert put in some stuff about LifeSurge on their Facebook page and the event, which was again at Extra Mile Stadium, which is the Boise State Stadium. And Alicia says something about regenerative agriculture and the profiteers. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. Is that, you probably read this one, Alicia, is that a positive or a negative? Were they being negative about, was this podcast negative about regenerative? It doesn't sound so positive when you say that, when whoever made that name up said the profiteers. So sounds like Alicia is in Providence today. How major brands are cultivating supply chains. Comment from someone from the audience. How can you tell if soil is healthy? This is taken from something, ecoacoustics, listen to it. Study of environmental sounds can be used to monitor soil health by detecting the presence and diversity of underground organisms. Probably very true. I mean, that's probably an accurate saying. Here's a pilot scale using recycled glass to grow plants for salsa ingredients. I don't know what that's all about. That's interesting. Crushed glass replaces soil. Oh, okay. So it's using the recycled glass as a media, which is awesome. I mean, remember in a hydroponic system, aquaponic system, you use all kinds of different non-soil related structures to be a media for the plants. By the way, I didn't do this. I don't know why I'm getting this right now, but I'm going to turn my camera for just a second. I stick my feet up in the air when I'm talking at my desk and show you my other monitor, which is a screensaver that is a video, and I have no idea where this is. It's called Naturescapes. This is red, by the way, and you're being a pain. I told you no earlier to not be in my face, but you are. Anyway, back to this monitor. It's showing the Alps, or I don't believe these are US mountains. This is probably somewhere in Europe or somewhere else in the world. That was a summit that we're going to right there. They're sure beautiful wherever they're at. Earlier, it was showing some boats sitting in a bay and just kind of floating. Looked pretty cool. So back to me. Look, I'm going to click and then maybe share my screen on this. Regenerative agriculture, the profiteers. Knew that would happen probably at some point. My dogs would start barking. I'm going to close the door on my office. So if they are going to bark, they're not going to be in my office. And that probably means that somebody's out in my road. Chris Marquis, a professor at the University of Cambridge Business School, sheds light on regenerative agriculture, a set of practices to restore farming. Has the profiteers. He discusses the need to hold companies accountable for environmental and social externalities associated with their operations, and supply chains. He describes how some companies have engaged in what he calls corporate gaslighting to shift the focus onto others. So he uses that term profiteers. I should share my screen. Let's see. Share. There we go. Here's what I was looking at. This article that one of the audience gave a link to, and it's obviously a podcast, so it's 39 minutes long. We could listen to it. We're not going to. But this professor, Chris Markey at University of Cambridge. Interesting though, this climate rising is a Harvard Business School. So they obviously, this is an interview from at Harvard Business School, got it, of this guy, Chris Markey, who is a Cambridge professor, who is talking about the profiteers. So I'm going to, again, show a little bit of my bias here, but I don't know that it's completely biased. Came out today that one of our current presidential candidates here in the United States, in the recent past, including a speech that was, or a speech that was given yesterday, is talking about a time in that person's life. Notice I'm not saying male or female. I'm trying to let you guess which of our presidential candidates this might be, but a time in that person's life between their freshman and sophomore years in college when they worked at McDonald's. And they started out as a person working back, doing different things in the kitchen at McDonald's, and then ended up being a cashier. Well, people have researched this claim, and McDonald's keeps pretty good records. The McDonald's franchisees are required to keep records, and there's no evidence that this person ever worked at McDonald's, ever. And this person in previous times in this person's life has given their resumes, and there's no list of working at McDonald's. And we're not talking about doing it when this person was a 12-year-old. We're talking about when they were probably 19, between their freshman or 20, between their freshman and sophomore years in college. And why would you lie about something like that? That is so easily researched. Something to think about. Why would you make up a job at McDonald's when you never worked there? And it was something that could be easily researched to determine that you're lying. I don't know. This, by the way, so here's something, this could be researched, but here's an article that he's using here in this, must talk about in this podcast, Tablas Creek Vineyard. So we're going to click on them and look at their site. Look at what they use to graze. It's a vineyard. That is a llama, not an alpaca. It's actually got a baby nursing from it right here. And I believe these are sheep. They don't have, well, you know what? They could be alpacas. Anyway, I believe I have met I was at a conference with one of the principals, owners / operators of Tablas Creek. Yeah, in Paso Robles, that's what I remembered. Paso Robles is the way they pronounce it. Here's their team. So let's see if this person that I met, it wasn't Jason Haas. I'm not remembering the guy's name. So it looks like Jason must have been Robert's son. And this guy was not one of the owners. So here's his father. It wasn't Neil Collins. This was a guy that I doubt is there anymore, actually. And I believe he served in this guy's role. I'm just not remembering his name. He was a student at a seminar that Mark Shepard and I did at a junior college in Central California. And this fellow was there and he told us about this winery, Tablas Creek. And his name is not here, I don't believe. I don't think he's anybody who we've seen here. I think I'd remember him when I saw his picture, but I'm not. Boy, lots of people, sales and marketing. They have a big staff. Denise Chenard, I wonder if she's at all related to Yvonne Chenard of Patagonia. You know, interestingly, I could look up potentially in my emails, do a search for Mark Shepard. And find something back, because my guess is the date of this was about 2017 sometime. So let's go back. I get a lot of junk emails that mention Mark's name. If anybody's got other questions, throw them in. Mark, if you've got anything.
By the way, Wayne, Peter has raised his hand, so should we allow him to talk?
Sure.
Okay, so let's see if he can. Okay, so I have asked to unmute, and Peter, you can try to talk now.
I'm looking for I'm looking for an email from Mark. I'm trying because I want to figure out who this Tablas Creek guy is.
Yeah, I think Peter is unmuted. He should be able
Okay.
to
Hey,
talk.
Peter,
Yeah.
what's up? How you doing
Well,
today?
you know, I'm not sure that, getting into politics is actually appropriate, but,
Well, if you
wait a
want,
minute, tuning into a potential lie by Kamala Harris, and that's okay.
I didn't say her
But,
name.
but what about the
You just did.
fucking 30,000?
Donald Trump has lied a whole bunch too, a
Yeah,
lot.
what do you mean a whole bunch? Nothing that comes out of his mouth is true.
Well, okay.
I mean, it's just, I mean, I was
Who's the
born in
one?
Brooklyn. I grew up in Queens the same time he was. I know the son of a bitch,
Who's the
and
one with the bias here? Me or you?
both of us.
Okay. I don't know that I don't know how you would
I
know.
don't really have a bias, but you were there, denigrating this woman for one potential lie when this other guy is like the king of lies. Her opponent. I mean, it's sort of like.
So what is your purpose for wanting to come on? Just to knock me here? I don't know. I don't
No, not
understand.
to, well, I'm a little bit concerned that like the last time I was on, the first thing that we saw was, your legs, and you know, you
What?
just sat around and talked about your college days and where you were and this and that. And I don't go quite understand what that has to do with economics, but that's okay. I mean, this is where it's evolved to. So, you know, that's okay.
My
It's,
legs.
it's your organization now. It's okay. You know, proceed. Great. You've got all kinds of people who think you're great. It's a really good thing.
So what would you like to add?
I have nothing. I got it. And that's it.
Okay.
I got, I mean, I don't know where you go with the kind of, you know, your webcasts are advertised to be like these earth-shattering ideas and all kinds of stuff. And you sit, you're not doing that. So, you know,
And you've watched,
it's
you've been
okay.
on,
I mean, you know, you're obviously
and
enjoying
you've
it.
been on how many of them, Peter? Why don't you give me a history of how many you've watched?
Okay, well,
No, Peter, can you answer that question? How many have you watched? Replays?
I watched the last one and I've been watching this one. That's it.
You've
I'm
watched
telling you the truth.
have you looked at the EAT community site to see how many we've done over the last 6.5 years? No,
It
you
doesn't
haven't.
matter if you're just sort of sitting around
Yeah.
chewing the fat about shit you did when you were in college.
Yeah, and
No, really. I
this is the
mean, you know,
Talk with Wayne
I didn't,
section.
I
The
didn't plan to
Talk with
listen to
Wayne.
you
If you
to
want to
tell me
talk about
about
a
special
topic,
places where in
if
college. That's all.
if you want to bring up a topic we can discuss, let's do it. Because I think if you've been listening to this since we started, other members out in the audience have brought up a number of things that we've discussed, and I'll talk about more of them. And we just left one. Someone gave us an article about something about profiteering in regenerative agriculture, and we were just working on that topic. Yeah, we're pretty transparent, Peter. Maybe more than you like.
It's
Nobody's
okay.
forcing
Yeah,
you to eat.
you know, you
Nobody's
do.
forcing you to be on this session. I'm just asking if there's something you'd like to have us talk about, let's do it.
That's all right.
If all you're going to do is be negative, you can do that too.
Well, I'm working on re-ruralization. When I get it a little bit, there's a focus going on and there's not a whole lot of use at the moment, because I'm very close to having everything in the right direction at least.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sure the group would look forward to that. I think I've asked you several times if you'd like to come on and talk about it, and you've said the same thing, which is that you're not ready to, and that's fine.
Okay. All right.
And this is all recorded and it won't be
It's
edited.
okay.
Mark, will any of what we just did, which didn't sound real positive, will it be edited?
No, we almost always post these videos as it is.
And what do you think about me having my Bangladeshi person talking, Mark? You know,
Yeah, right. I'm not from the US, but I enjoy everything Wayne does. So yeah, I'm on each one of these. Even he brings on some guests sometimes. I'm on all the time. Yep.
yeah, sometimes. How many times do we have Mark Shepard that we're looking at his stuff right now? Which I'm assuming you've heard of Mark Shepard, right, Peter?
I have no idea who Mark Shepard is.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think maybe one of the more economic people in what he's done in his life in the world.
I don't know everybody.
No, none of us do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, keep on keeping on.
All right. So I'm still going to look. I'm looking to see if we can find out this fella at Tablis who was there. And again, I'm back to 17 in the emails, and I'm not seeing as I'm looking. It's not something that I could look real quickly and get. Anyway, let's see, Mark, what else do we have from people here? We have any other additional info in the chats?
Yeah,
Um,
there are a bunch of questions here. I see that. Pretty long question. So here's a quote from Alexander about PFAS,
Right,
uh,
PFAS is
contamination.
something that
Yeah.
we could talk about. Um,
Is it pronounced
make sure,
PFAS?
Mark, make sure I don't show my legs either. Man, that would,
No, why would that? That doesn't bother any. I don't think it bothers anybody.
I'm seeing my face now. That's kind of pretty.
Right.
Um, does no-till mean, here's one that was put in from the audience of strategic tillage. Does no-till mean never till? There's a YouTube video about it. I haven't seen that. Um, it, interestingly, I think the answer is going to be that it doesn't mean that. No-till means that you probably start out by tilling and then you don't till anymore. But there's always, again, different definitions of of different things. So, I told you there was some risk at saying something a little bit that was going to sound political, just as I said, there's some risk in saying things about that would be somewhat spiritual. So obviously I did offend Peter by being political and, talking about somebody that has, at least is being accused of lying about something when, again, the other person has been accused of lying for forever and is continuing to be. So, I mean, I don't know why it's inappropriate to say that a lot of times politicians are accused of being liars about different things. That's not at all uncommon. It looks like we're seeing some things about the broken glass article being used as a media. Um, Here's something from Pepsi about stormwater. Um, they, they've done some things to set a new standard for watershed help, or excuse me, watershed health. Here's a great one that people could use, because remember, the whole definition of economics is showing people how they can make a little money making the planet better. I haven't looked, but I'm gonna take a guess at something. And then I am gonna look and I'm gonna see if I'm right. Um, I'm wrong. I mean, I was gonna guess that Peter was so upset that he would leave, but he's still there.
Absolutely.
Anyway, thanks for being and hanging on, Robert.
Oh, the
Sorry
thing
that
is,
sorry that I
I'm
offended you.
concerned about the, uh, never mind. I ain't going in.
I see that. Awesome. Anyway, the Western SARE, which is a grant program from, I believe it's US EPA. So anybody, again, that's out there listening either live or on the replay, if you are looking for grant money and again, you're wanting to be economic, which is making a little bit of money, making the planet better. And I think almost every time I say it, making a little bit of money, making the planet better, because it's not making just so much that it's ridiculous. But this is a grant program. I'm going to click on that to see what that one is as it comes up on your screen. SARE is, yeah, the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education. Maybe Peter can add something, because maybe Peter's got a similar sort of a perspective um, on just the whole topic of economics as Dennis did. And that Dennis really cared about all kinds of things. Dennis was amazing that way. But he was probably more of a gearhead. His personal passions were related to transportation and how we could be doing things better in the transportation sector to make the planet better. And so he focused on that. And when he asked Scott Fardulis and myself to just to take over the Institute of Economics from a leadership perspective and put in some capital into it and so on. We said, we're not as much of, quote, gearheads as you are. And we're probably not going to emphasize the transportation as much as you did. And I think I've been real open about it. I wish we'd find some people in our sphere that would really want to provide webinars, do podcasts, provide research, do whatever it is that they feel they can add the most value with in the transportation area. There's some very cool things going on in that area with hydrogen, with ammonia as options. Obviously, electric's been around now. I think it is accurate. So this isn't a lie. This isn't a fabrication. That Dennis is given credit for at BMW of helping them originally look at electric, and they really didn't even do much with it at the time. But they would give him, if there were people around that remembered that time frame. But anyway, let's look at this SAR and what it's saying here. Why there's a grant available. This word sustainable, I think the word regenerative is a better one. Sustainable does kind of imply, how do you keep things the same? Sustain, keep them like they are. Where regenerative means make things better. I don't see where their funding comes from. I think it does come from USDA. And this one happens to also be going through Montana State, this particular funding. So thank you for putting that in there. Again, all the chat will be put up on the website. We've already talked about the potential lie about working at McDonald's. And again, that's just asserted and alleged. I don't even know if it's true. The Dow Wet Rest Project aims to restore biodiversity in the Danube. Okay, there's a source for that. Silviculture, the webinar, Cornell. PFAS, by the way, quote, forever chemicals are probably the next major type of environmental issue, environmental contaminant that is going to be studied, and hopefully attempts made to reduce the presence of. And it is a kind of an organic substance that's not able to be seen, not to be able to be smelled, not able to be tasted very, very easily, and is present in soils, is present in water, groundwater, surface waters. It comes from a lot of sources, but one of the more common sources is Teflon, that we use a lot of our cookware to coat, and so it's pretty universal, and it's why it's called the life chemical, forever chemical. And here's how they end up on farms. Comment from Alicia. Since '92, it's been illegal to dump municipal sewage sludge into the ocean. To replace ocean dumping, farmers have been pushed to use sludge as a cheap fertilizer. They're not forced to do that. And again, I'm going to argue and say a good farmer would never do that. A farmer who's trying to just cheat the system and not be economic might, but they certainly wouldn't do it if they were. So And then this comment from this article says that this sludge contains PFAS. Yep, it probably does. Interestingly, the science behind PFAS contamination is not very well established yet. We're still very early in the process of establishing it. And there's still some question about just what it does cause in terms of health risk. Is it cancerous, can cause cancer? Is it heart issues? Is it digestive issues, respiratory issues, you name it? That study is going to be going on for a long time. It was typical, though. There's been a very strong reaction on the part of regulatory bodies in various states to regulate it. By the way, it's not banned. It's still used in lots of different types of products. Clothing, by the way, Gore-Tex, water repellents, almost every kind of water repellent has got PFAS chemicals in it. Anyway, so it's ubiquitous. It's used in a lot of different ways. And it's again still not real sure exactly what its impacts are going to be. So the regulators initially reacted in some states and created very low levels that if water supplies of different kinds have more than those amounts, something will happen to the providers of those water supplies. So a city, for example, that would have above a certain level in a state that has regulations, Michigan, for example, is one state that does. If the city's water samples had higher levels of PFAS than were allowed, then they would be punished by some kind of a fine. Would their water be taken out of use? Probably not. It's not like lead, for example, where we know that if a water supply has X amount of lead in it, that it's going to be dangerous to drink. And in those cases, when that's happened in various different places, and it was detected, those water supplies have been shut down for various periods of time. So here's from this article that is quoted here. It's whoever wrote it's being fairly strong in terms of an opinion that it should be banned and it shouldn't be allowed to be put on sludges on farmland. Yep, that's probably a great thought. Here's an interesting one. Something about Cornell University and having a sawmill type of presentation in September. And here's MOFA, an article. Let's click on that one and see what that is. It's Maine. So MOFA is the Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners. And this article is about PFAS in, I don't know, it's in human bodies, but I don't know whether it's going to go into soils or what it is. Look at how broad it is, 5,000 to 10,000 different chemicals. In 2016 is when Maine began to look at it. So this is showing a pretty neat graphic about where PFAS could come from. Here's a wastewater treatment center. Consumer goods would potentially go into it by ending up in a garbage situation and having water hit them. And then wastewater from them would go there. Solids from that wastewater treatment system would be done like we just saw another one of our audience talk about being put into sludge, and those sludge biosolids put onto farmland. And then obviously it could go back to food from there. Food could end up being the source of human exposure, could end up in water, and water could be the source of human exposure. And then just wearing clothing from the consumer goods themselves could be the source of human exposure. And again, starting over here with industry, that would be making them. Firefighting foam is another thing. So it's real common to see contaminated soils on airport runways and so on that have high levels of PFAS. And that foam could end up in the environment. And again, all of this going both through biosolids, through wastewater into the environment, into drinking water, into people. Pretty nice graphic, actually. And I don't know that you'd have to limit this to PFAS. You could put this as just generally an environmental contaminant pathway, and it probably is appropriate for most of them. Do they really last forever? Question. This person who's being interviewed here is saying they're learning about it still. Yeah, nothing lasts forever, by the way. So it probably is, and I have studied PFAS some. It's got a very long half-life, just like a lot of radiological chemicals do, and the time frame is so long it could seem like it's forever. All right, well that's a whole bunch of stuff on PFAS. We could have a whole session on PFAS. Multiple sessions, actually, multiple speakers. Anybody knows a really good, passionate PFAS speaker? Let's get them to come in. And then in the chat, we're going to have, there's some great little quotes that different viewers here have put in about PFAS and different kinds of chemicals that are in that category. All right, I think that's the end of our current questions and comments. Again, this is our Talk with Wayne session, and just your thoughts, whatever you have, and however they are certainly worthy of us talking about them. And if you want to bring something up, put it in the chat, raise your hand and unmute yourself. Mark can unmute you. I can unmute you. And so this is a relatively long question and answer article about PFAS. And yes, audience, I do talk about things that are of interest to me because, again, it is a Talk with Wayne session. And that's the whole point. When we interview other people who have their own topics, it's not Talk with Wayne. It's where hopefully at that point they either give their presentation and we just listen, or we ask them specific questions about whatever the topic is that they want to discuss. We'd love to get new speakers. We're always looking for them. Hardest thing we have is to get new speakers that are, we don't even, as long as they're going to talk about something economic, ways to show people how to make a little money making the planet better, then we're willing to listen to them. So, Mark, anything else you're seeing that maybe we should focus? I don't see any other questions or comments from our audience at this point. I haven't put up anything today on AI,
Right,
it keeps emerging every day in a little bit bigger and better way.
right.
You see some of the things that I've been looking at today. This is interesting, Mark, boy, all the topics. Look at how many emails that
Huh. Yeah, a lot of.
one of 1900 that are just all these. We're back to only 2017. I think if we keep going, we could get back to probably about 2012, in which time frame would be some that Mark would be involved in my life in an emailing perspective.
Yeah, and tomorrow I'll be showing a replay from one of these sessions. So uh, if anybody is interested, just jump on that replay. You can
Right.
watch. Yeah.
Here's somebody, Sam, who Mark went to do some work. Sam Queller. I thought it was probably Sam. He's down in the south somewhere. I think in Louisiana potentially. Mark did a lot of work with him. Um, let's look a little bit more on PFAS. Let's look at PFAS health impacts. Just quickly do a Google search about that, see what we find. It's actually not a Google search, it's a DuckDuckGo search. It's a fairly recent US EPA, May of this year. Concerns are breaks down slowly. This is all about where it's from. We talked about that. And again, they are being careful, saying we may be harmful. There are things they don't know yet. It's not quite like, again, you've heard me talk about this before a number of times. Why is asbestos such a unique contaminant? Mark, do you remember? See if anybody in our audience does.
Yeah, asbestos can cause cancer, right? And it's found in most older buildings, like for roofing, floor tiles, or any number of things, walls. So yeah, that can cause. You can almost be certain that there are some elements in that of causing cancer.
Yeah, that's all accurate, but there is one really unique reason that asbestos became the most litigated environmental contaminant in the world. Still is. It's in that. If it's not the most today, it's in the top 5, and it probably over time it is number 1, which means the most lawsuits against manufacturers or users of asbestos in their products in the world. The reason that it became that is there are 2 diseases that, to the best of man's knowledge, doctors, medical professionals' knowledge, are only caused by asbestos. Nothing else can cause these 2 diseases. One of them is a kind of cancer, by the way, and the other one is respiratory, and its name even comes from asbestos, so it's called asbestosis, and it is lethal. Not always. People can outlive it. In other words, they'll die from something else and not from asbestosis. They can have it and they can live long enough to not die from it. Mesothelioma is all, to a best of our knowledge, it's like pancreatic cancer. It's very difficult to treat, and almost, I don't think there's any real known treatment for it. And it will kill you in, a very finite period of time if once you're diagnosed. But there is no evidence that any other environmental contaminant exposure causes those two diseases. Well, that is, quote, heaven for environmental litigators, for lawyers, because if you have either of those two diseases, you only got them because you were exposed to asbestos. All other kinds of environmental contaminants, you could argue that a person had some disease, was injured by, and if they accused the chemical that you're responsible for, lead, for example, PFAS, you name it. Whatever your disease is, could also be caused by something else other than that chemical that your lawyers are claiming that caused you to have it. So again, if it's lead poisoning, there are lots of things that you can point to, and you could probably determine pretty easily if you were exposed to lead and how you were exposed, and then you could win a lawsuit against a lead manufacturer. But it's possible that something else could have caused your lead, your symptoms, that other than lead, or that something other than the source that you're claiming it was causing it, but not with asbestos. If you've got one of those two diseases, you were exposed to asbestos in your life, and maybe at very low levels. Anyway, there's a few other comments and questions here, so let's look at those. We've got about 5 minutes before we call it for the day.
Yeah, I have a question about politics. So,
Sure.
all right. So, what are your thoughts about like two-party versus the multi-party system that we have? So we have like 10 parties competing, and you have only two. So, uh, and now you brought up a controversial topic of Kamala Harris, and now I think she is gaining popularity. We can already see. So, is there only two options, or maybe independent candidate can take place, or what are the chances of that happening?
In the recent history, at least in the US, we have had a, quote, two-party system. That's not required by anything. Our republic form of government, our democratic form of government, either one of those words could be descriptive. I'm not an expert on that topic at all, but there's certainly room and the potential to have multiple parties. For many, many years, probably since at least the Civil War in 1860s, 150 plus years, there's primarily been two. During elections in which there was a prominent third party, that third party has been shown to have had some impact. So Ross Perot, it was one of the more recent that was in that circumstance. And I think looking back at what the effects that he had on the election, he didn't win, but the effects that he had on the election were measurable and probably significant. Robert Kennedy Jr., who just abandoned his electoral ambitions for at least this election, presidential election, was, in my opinion, having some pretty significant impact. And And again, I don't mind showing it, but I was a supporter of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Um, and he dropped out, and he has now shown support for one of those two primary candidates. But anyway, I'm not enough of a student of history, Mark, to think that any opinion that I have about whether a multi-party electoral situation is better or worse than a two-party or not. I don't personally. I don't know enough. I haven't studied that whole topic enough to know that I personally have opinions. If anyone in our audience do, they
Yeah,
certainly should mention that. But um, it again, it has been the case for a number of years here, and
right.
and you know, one of our audience talks about Robert F. Kennedy and his discussions of big pharma. That was one of the reasons I was very excited about him, because I'm pretty negative about big pharma and their wealth and their impact on our governmental system. So, and you can, yeah, I mean, again, audience members saying that you can use different I mean, there are different states that have different approaches to where multiple parties are actually very active and have the chance to have more success in electoral situations. So on a national level, we've seen this two-party system for quite some time, but at the state level, the local level, you know, city level, county level, which are all levels at which there are elected officials, government officials, there have been much more, there's been much more evidence of multi-party electorates. So anyway. Robert actually asked, and maybe he's asking you, Mark, how does ranked choice voting work where there are 10 parties like in your country, like in Bangladesh?
Right. So the party getting maximum number of votes, they form government, and then they form their all the ministers and cabinet, everything. Uh, and then there's the anti, like all the other are the opposition. So that's how it's based on how many are elected from each party to form the opposition. So basically, the majority form government, and the rest of the others form the opposition party, and then that's how they work. So, and it's directly voting, so it's not like electoral college like U.S. So people directly vote candidates, and then all those people, they go to the assembly. So um, the it's like the parliament. So yeah, that's the assembly.
By the way, I'm not going to put my legs up, and maybe that's what Peter was talking about. But shoot, I'm taking it's my keyboard. Oh no, that's my watch, my arms. But I was going to show on this screensaver that again I've got on this other monitor. Right now, it's a beautiful. I think, isn't that a cool picture of a lighthouse? Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
Or it's a video actually, just so that this just cycles. Again, I didn't put this up here. Somehow this smart monitor decided to put this. It's called Stingray, is the source. Stingray, it's called Naturescape is the name of the screensaver. It's obviously being played. All right. Well, thanks everybody. That was fun. Appreciate all of you being here, and again, we get 100 times more people that watch the replays and never watch us live. So for all of you that watch this as a replay, appreciate you and all of what you do, and keep going out there and making it a better planet. And I'm, not going to be judgmental about anything that you might be doing to do that. So anyway, Mark, unless there's something else new, I don't see anything here. There's a question about a benevolent dictator. And